Unaware his pregnant wife had just inherited a billion-dollar empire, a husband watched his mistress throw his wife and three-day-old newborn into a blizzard while he stood there smiling. The pregnant wife's body was still bleeding from emergency surgery 3 days earlier, her newborn daughter screaming as freezing snow buried them both on the mansion steps. But what this husband didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know as he slammed that door, was that his pregnant wife had just inherited a $2.3 billion empire exactly 1 hour before he and his mistress threw her and their newborn into the snow. This husband was completely unaware his wife now owned his family's mansion, controlled their failing company, and held every single debt that kept his family alive. The husband thought he was throwing out a worthless, broken woman. But his pregnant wife, who had just inherited a billion-dollar empire, was about to do something that shocked everyone who heard this story. Because when this wife walked into the boardroom 8 weeks later, her husband and mistress didn't recognize her until she spoke. What did she say that made her husband's mistress scream? Why did his mother's face turn white as death? What was on the surveillance footage that made 50 million people rage share this story across the planet? And here's what nobody's talking about. What did this thrown-away wife do with her newborn that made even her own lawyers say she'd gone too far? Stay until the very end, because what this husband and mistress did in that snow is only half the story. What came after is what shocked everyone. Let me take you back to 3 days before that blizzard. Meen Chen lay in a hospital bed staring at white ceiling tiles that seemed to blur together every time she blinked. Her abdomen felt like someone had placed hot coals under her skin. The emergency C-section had left a line of surgical staples across her belly, 12 metal pieces holding her together. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent lightning through her core. But the physical pain wasn't what kept her awake at night. It was the emptiness beside her bed. Brandon Kingston hadn't visited in 48 hours. Not once. The nurses whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. Their pitying look said everything their mouths wouldn't. Meen kept telling herself he was busy with work, that he'd come soon, that maybe there was traffic or an emergency at the office. She was lying to herself, and somewhere deep down she knew it. Her phone buzzed on the rolling table beside her. Sarah, her best friend. The message made her stomach drop before she even opened it. Meen, I'm so sorry. Please don't check Instagram. Please. Of course she checked. Her fingers were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. There it was. Brandon's profile. A new post from 2 hours ago. Him with another woman. She was glowing, radiant, beautiful, and very clearly pregnant. Her hand rested on her belly the way pregnant women do when they want everyone to see. The caption punched Meen in the chest harder than any physical blow could. With my real family finally complete. Meen stared at those words until they stopped making sense. Real family. Real family. Real. She looked down at her daughter sleeping in the bassinet beside her bed. Luna was 3 days old. She had Brandon's nose, his dark hair, her tiny fingers curled into fists like she was ready to fight the world. And Brandon had just told the entire internet that this baby, his biological daughter, wasn't his real family. Something cracked inside Meen's chest right then, not her heart breaking. That would come later. This was something else. This was the sound of every lie she told herself finally shattering. The hospital door didn't open. It exploded inward. The handle hit the wall so hard it left a dent in the plaster. Meen jumped, instinctively pulling Luna's bassinet closer, even though the baby was still asleep. Brandon's mother stood in the doorway, like a storm given human form. Helena Kingston had always terrified Meen. She was the kind of woman who could make you feel small without saying a single word. Her eyes were cold, her posture rigid, her expression carved from ice. Behind her came the woman from the Instagram photo, Cassandra. She had this smile on her face, not a friendly smile, but the kind a cat gives a mouse before it pounces. One hand rested on her pregnant belly like she was claiming territory. Then came Natasha, Brandon's sister. She already had her phone out, camera pointed directly at Meen's bed. She was recording. And finally, Gregory Kingston, Brandon's father. A man who had looked at Meen like she was dirt on his expensive shoes every single day for 3 years. They surrounded her hospital bed, 5 people circling a woman who couldn't even sit up without pain, shooting through her abdomen. Meen was still hooked to an IV, still wearing a hospital gown, still bleeding. Helena didn't waste time. "You've ruined my son's life long enough." Her voice was sharp, precise, designed to cut. Cassandra stepped closer. Meen will never forget what she said next. "That baby isn't even his. We did a secret DNA test." The world tilted. What DNA test? When? How? Meen tried to speak, but her mouth wouldn't form words. Gregory threw a stack of papers onto her lap. The weight of them felt heavier than paper should feel. "Sign the divorce papers or we'll take the baby, and you'll get nothing." Meen's hands shook as she picked up the papers. The words swam in front of her eyes. Petition for divorce, infidelity, fraud, unfit mother. Every accusation was a knife. Natasha was still filming, actually laughing at Meen's tears. "This is going to get so many views," she said to her phone like Meen wasn't even human. Helena leaned in close enough that Meen could smell her expensive perfume, mixed with something bitter underneath. "Sign it now or we call Child Protective Services. We'll tell them you're mentally unstable. Postpartum psychosis. We have doctors on payroll who will say whatever we need them to say." Fear flooded Meen's body like ice water. They were going to take Luna. They were actually going to take her baby. She was drugged, exhausted, in pain, terrified, and completely alone. So she signed. Her hands shook so badly the signature looked nothing like her real handwriting. That's when Cassandra started laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh that comes from deep in the belly. "Did you actually think a nobody like you could keep a Kingston?" Then they told her the truth. And the truth was worse than anything Meen could have imagined. Brandon had married her as a bet with his college friends. They paid him $100,000 to marry the poorest girl on campus and see how long he could stand it. 3 years. 3 years of her life. 3 years of love, devotion, trying so hard to be good enough for his family. 3 years of taking Helena's abuse and Gregory's contempt and Natasha's cruelty. All of it was a joke. She was the punchline. But they weren't done. Helena insisted Meen come to the Kingston mansion to collect her things. She had no choice. The hospital was discharging her today anyway. They needed the room for someone who actually had insurance that would pay. So Meen wrapped Luna in the thin blanket the hospital provided and went to the place she'd called home for 3 years, knowing she'd never be welcome there again. The mansion looked different now, colder. The marble floors she'd scrubbed on her hands and knees seemed to stretch forever. The paintings she'd dusted 1,000 times watched her with empty eyes. This place had never been a home. It had been a prison. She walked through those halls one last time, carrying her daughter against her chest. Memories attacked her from every corner. The dinner party where Helena made her serve guests like hired help while wearing her oldest clothes. The tiny room in the back of the house where she'd slept because the master bedroom was too good for her. The time Helena slapped her in front of their friends because Meen mentioned her mother had died. Gregory had laughed and said, "You should thank us every day for letting trash live in our house." When Meen got to her room, everything was gone. Her clothes, her books, the few photographs she had, all thrown in the garbage bins outside. She found them there, soaked and ruined from yesterday's rain. Her mother's jewelry, the only thing she had left of her, gone. She later learned Natasha had taken it, sold it, used the money for Botox. Meen's wedding photos were burning in the fireplace downstairs. Someone had thrown them in like they were nothing. She packed what little she could salvage into one small bag. Luna was crying now, hungry, needing to be changed. But before Meen could leave, Helena's voice echoed through the mansion. "Everyone to the main hall. Now." Meen's stomach dropped. She knew this wasn't over. The entire Kingston family waited in the main hall like they were holding court. Helena stood at the center. Brandon was there too, standing next to Cassandra with his arm around her waist. He wouldn't look at Meen, couldn't look at her. "Before you leave," Helena said, her voice cold and final, "you will kneel and apologize for wasting 3 years of our time." Meen just stood there holding her crying baby, too shocked to move, too broken to respond. "I said kneel." Meen shook her head. She doesn't know where she found the courage. Maybe it was Luna's crying. Maybe it was finally having nothing left to lose. No! Gregory's face turned purple with rage. He nodded to two security guards Meen had never seen before. Big men with blank expressions. They grabbed her arms and Meen started screaming. Please, I have my baby. Please don't hurt her. But they didn't care. One of them ripped Luna from Meen's arms. The sound Meen made wasn't human. It came from somewhere primal, somewhere ancient. The guard held Luna like she was a package, ignoring her screams. Then they started dragging Meen. The pain was instant and excruciating. Her C-section staples felt like they were tearing through her skin. Something warm and wet spread through her clothes. Blood. She was bleeding. They dragged her across those marble floors like she was furniture, like she was nothing. Luna was screaming that horrible newborn cry that every parent knows means something is deeply wrong. Natasha followed them with her phone, recording everything, laughing so hard she could barely hold it steady. Cassandra stood with Brandon, snuggled up to him, watching with his satisfied smile. And Brandon just stood there with dead empty eyes. When they reached the front doors, Meen saw the blizzard outside. Snow coming down so heavy you couldn't see 3 feet ahead. The temperature had to be below 15 degrees. They opened those massive doors and freezing wind hit Meen like a physical slap. Helena walked up, looked Meen right in the eyes and said, "This is where garbage belongs." Then they threw her. Actually, threw her down the mansion steps. Meen tried to curl up, tried to protect herself, but she hit stone hard. 12 steps. She felt every single one. Her shoulder took most of the impact and something popped. Her bag came flying after her, and everything spilled into the snow. The security guard tossed Luna after her like a bag of trash. Meen barely caught her daughter, pain exploding through her shoulder as she did. Natasha shouted from the doorway, "Don't come back or we'll call the police for trespassing." The door slammed with a sound like thunder, and then there was only silence. Silence and snow and cold and pain. Meen sat at the bottom of those steps, blood staining the white snow around her. Luna screaming in her arms. She had no phone. They'd taken it. No money. No coat. Just a thin hospital gown, cheap leggings and shoes that were already soaked through. For the first time in her life, Meen wanted to die. Really wanted to die. Just close her eyes and let the cold take her. But Luna's cry cut through that thought like a blade. Her daughter needed her. So Meen stood up. Every movement was agony. Her vision blurred. Her legs didn't want to hold her weight. But she stood, and she started walking. She doesn't know how long she walked through that blizzard. Time stopped meaning anything. The world was just white and cold and pain. Luna's crying got quieter. Then it stopped completely. That's when real terror set in. Babies don't just go quiet in the cold. That's not normal. That means they're dying. Meen collapsed near a streetlight, her body finally giving up. She pulled Luna close, trying to share whatever warmth she had left. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough. She was ready to close her eyes, ready to let it end. That's when she saw the lights. 3 black cars pulled up out of nowhere. Expensive cars, the kind she'd only seen at Kingston family events. An elderly man in an immaculate suit stepped out, holding an umbrella. He looked down at her with the kindest eyes Meen had ever seen. "Miss Meen Chen," he said, "thank God we found you." Meen couldn't speak, couldn't move. She just held Luna and cried as this stranger and a team of medical professionals rushed toward them. They wrapped them both in heated blankets, put them in a car with warm air blasting, rushed them to a hospital that didn't look like any hospital Meen had ever seen. Everything was clean, expensive, quiet. When Meen woke up, she was in a beautiful room, soft lighting, comfortable bed. Her first thought was Luna. She tried to sit up and pain shot through her entire body. A nurse was beside her instantly. "Your daughter is in the NICU," she said gently. "She's going to be fine." But it was very close. 10 more minutes and we would have lost her. 10 more minutes. The Kingston family had come within 10 minutes of murdering her baby. The elderly man from the street was sitting in a chair beside her bed. He looked like he'd been crying. "My name is Arthur Harrison," he said quietly. "I'm your grandfather's attorney, and we need to talk about your inheritance."
What Arthur Harrison told me next changed everything. Her grandfather was William Chen. She'd never known him, never even heard his name. Her mother, Li Wei, had run away from the Chen family when Meen was just a baby after some kind of dispute. She'd changed both their names, hidden them, died 5 years ago without ever reconnecting with her father. But William Chen had never stopped looking for them, never stopped searching. He'd built a massive empire worth $2.3 billion across real estate, technology, manufacturing, and hospitality while he searched. He'd found them 1 year ago, but wanted to wait until after Meen's baby was born to reveal himself. He'd been watching from a distance, seeing everything. Everything the Kingston family did to her. Every humiliation, every cruelty, every moment of abuse. He saw it all. Then 5 days ago, while Meen was still in the hospital recovering from her C-section, William Chen had a massive heart attack. He died before he could meet his granddaughter. But before he died, he left everything to Meen, his entire empire, all $2.3 billion. Arthur handed Meen a letter in her grandfather's handwriting. Through tears that burned her eyes, Meen read words that felt like they were written directly into her soul. My dear granddaughter, I failed your mother by being too proud and too stubborn to accept her choices. I won't fail you. Take this empire and show them what Chen blood really means. Never bow to anyone again. You are not trash. You are not nothing. You are a Chen, and we bow to no one. Meen's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the letter. Arthur wasn't finished. He pulled out folder after folder, documents, photographs, financial records. The DNA test the Kingstons showed her? Completely fake. They'd bribed a corrupt doctor at a clinic that had since been shut down for fraud. Brandon's bet with his college friends? Recorded on video. Arthur had a copy. Brandon and 3 other rich boys laughing about who could marry the poorest girl and make her life hell the longest. The Kingston family business? Failing catastrophically. They were almost bankrupt. $50 million in debt to various creditors and sinking fast. Here's where it got interesting. Gregory Kingston had recently applied for a major contract with Chen Global Industries. Meen's company now. Helena's boutique chain was renting space in 6 buildings across the city. Meen owned those buildings. Natasha's modeling agency was funded by Chen Venture Capital. Meen controlled that investment fund. The Kingston family's entire financial survival depended on companies Meen now owned. And they had absolutely no idea. Meen looked at Arthur Harrison and felt something shift inside her chest. The scared, broken girl who'd been thrown in the snow was gone. Something colder had taken her place. Something harder. Something sharp enough to cut. Tell me everything about their business, Meen said. Her voice didn't sound like her own anymore. Every single detail, every debt, every contract, every weakness. I want to know where they're vulnerable. Arthur smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I was hoping you'd say that. The next 8 weeks were a blur of transformation. Meen threw herself into learning everything about her grandfather's empire. Business strategy, corporate law, negotiation tactics, market manipulation. She studied the way wolves study their prey. She took self-defense classes because she never wanted to feel physically helpless again. The instructor was a former military man named James Park. He taught her Krav Maga. How to break bones. How to fight dirty. How to turn fear into fuel. She bought expensive suits in gray and white and black. Learned how to walk into a room and own it before she even spoke. How to make men twice her age afraid to meet her eyes. Luna had a team of nannies now. The best care money could buy. Meen made sure her daughter never cried alone, never went hungry, never felt abandoned. Everything Meen did was for Luna. Every move she made was to build a world where her daughter would never be thrown away. Meen became Chairwoman Chen. In business meetings, executives either feared her or respected her, usually both. She was 26 years old and controlled billions. But she wasn't just learning, she was plotting. Arthur's legal team helped her buy up all of Kingston Industries' debt. Every single penny of that $50 million. Now Meen owned it. She could call it due whenever she wanted. She could destroy them with a phone call. She had her investigators dig into Natasha's past. Found out she'd been lying about her age for years. lying about her plastic surgeries. The investigators leaked everything to the modeling agencies, posted before and after photos on anonymous Instagram accounts. Natasha's career imploded overnight. Helena's boutiques started getting violation notices, fire code issues, health department inspections, occupancy limit violations. Meen's lawyers made sure everything was perfectly legal, just perfectly timed. And Cassandra. Oh, Cassandra. Meen's investigators found out her real name was Candy Thompson. She wasn't some sophisticated socialite. She was a con artist from a trailer park in Riverside. She'd scammed 3 rich men before Brandon, married them, cleaned out their accounts, disappeared, and she wasn't even pregnant. The whole thing was fake. Prosthetic belly, forged ultrasounds from a medical clinic that didn't exist anymore. Meen had proof of everything. The Kingston family was falling apart and they didn't even know Meen was behind it. Natasha's modeling agency dropped her. She became a trending topic on social media for all the wrong reasons. People called her a fraud, a liar. The video of her filming Meen's abuse in the hospital got leaked anonymously. Suddenly, Natasha wasn't just a liar. She was a monster. Helena's boutiques were failing inspections left and right. Her lawyers couldn't figure out why. Every time they fixed one violation, another notice appeared. It was like fighting smoke. Cassandra's true identity got leaked to a true crime podcast. Her 3 previous victims came forward, gave interviews, showed bank statements. When Brandon found out his pregnant fiancée was actually a con artist who wasn't even pregnant, he lost his mind. Their relationship exploded in spectacular fashion. Gregory was getting calls from debt collectors every single day, threatening letters, legal notices. He was drowning and couldn't figure out why all his creditors were suddenly demanding payment at once. They were desperate, panicking, exactly where Meen wanted them. Finally, Gregory got the email he'd been praying for. An invitation to meet with the CEO of Chen Global Industries. The contract that would save his entire company. $200 million. It was their last hope. Their only hope. The Kingston family celebrated like they'd already won. Meen watched them through surveillance footage her security team had installed in their mansion. She'd bought the property weeks ago through a shell company. They were technically renting from her now and didn't even know it. Helena actually said, "Thank God that trash Meen is gone. We're finally free of her bad luck." Natasha laughed and said, "I wonder what happened to her. Probably dead in a ditch somewhere." Cassandra, even knowing her own lies were falling apart, added, "Who cares? She was nobody." She is nobody. Brandon just sat there drinking whiskey at 10 in the morning. He looked terrible, unshaven, unwashed, hollow. But he didn't defend Meen. He never defended her. Meen smiled at the screen in her office. She was 45 floors above the city in Chen Global headquarters. Her office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking everything. She owned so much of this city now. So much of everything. "Enjoy your last days of peace," Meen whispered to the screen. "The storm is coming." The morning of the meeting, Meen chose her outfit with surgical precision. A sharp white suit. Armani. The fabric felt like armor. Her hair pulled back so severely it hurt. Minimal makeup except for dark red lipstick the color of blood. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like power. She looked like money. She looked like someone you don't cross. Perfect. The Kingston family arrived at Chen Global headquarters looking shabby. Gregory wore an old suit that didn't fit right anymore. Weight loss from stress. Helena's jewelry was obviously fake up close. Cubic zirconia instead of diamonds. Natasha looked rough. Dark circles under her eyes. No amount of makeup could hide them. Brandon was clearly hungover. His hands shook. They looked like what they were. A family desperately clinging to the last shreds of status while everything crumbled around them. The receptionist sent them to the 45th floor. Meen imagined them in that elevator, nervous but hopeful, thinking this meeting would save them. The elevator doors opened to Meen's executive floor, all glass and steel and impossible views. They were led to the boardroom, massive table, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the entire city spread out below like a kingdom. Meen was sitting at the head of the table, Her chair turned away from them, facing those windows, looking out at everything she now owned. She let them wait, let them wonder. She could hear them behind her. Gregory clearing his throat, Helena's breathing, Natasha shifting in her seat, Brandon's foot tapping nervously. 3 minutes of silence. It felt like hours. Then slowly, Meen turned her chair around. "Hello, Gregory, Helena, Natasha, Brandon." Her voice was ice, pure ice. You should have seen their faces. Gregory went pale white like he'd seen a ghost. Actually gasped out loud. Helena made this choking sound and then her eyes rolled back. She fainted. Just collapsed right there in her chair. Natasha had to catch her mother. Her phone clattered to the floor. Brandon just froze. His mouth fell open. No sound came out. He looked like his brain had short-circuited. "It's Chairwoman Chen to you," Meen said. Her voice cut through the room like a blade. "Please, sit down." Security guards stepped in front of the exits. 2 large men in black suits, arms crossed, faces blank. No one was leaving this room until Meen said so. Meen stood up slowly. She'd practiced this moment 1,000 times in her head. Every word, every gesture, every pause. She walked around that table like a predator circling prey. 2 months ago, she began, her voice steady and cold. "You threw me and my 3-day-old daughter into a blizzard." Behind her, the massive screen on the wall lit up. Her security team had recovered all the footage from the Kingston mansion before they could delete it. Every camera, every angle, every second of her humiliation played in crystal clear quality. The hospital ambush. Helena threatening her. The mansion degradation. Being dragged across marble floors while she screamed. Luna crying, the guards ripping her baby from her arms. Being thrown down those steps, the blood in the snow. All of it. Helena had woken up by then. When she saw the footage, she started crying. Real tears. Not of remorse, of fear. Natasha tried to stammer out some excuse. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Shut up!" Meen's voice came out like thunder. The entire room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Meen opened a folder, slid documents across that polished table. They scattered in front of the Kingstons like evidence at a crime scene. "Let me tell you what's about to happen." Meen looked at Gregory first. He couldn't meet her eyes. "I own all your debt. $50 million. It's due immediately. You have 48 hours to pay in full or I seize everything. Your company, your mansion, your cars. Every single asset, all of it." Gregory's face turned purple. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Just a strangled sound. Meen moved on. She turned to Helena. Her former mother-in-law, the woman who'd called her garbage. "Your boutiques are on my properties, all 6 of them. You're evicted, effective immediately. Security is changing the locks as we speak." Meen paused. Let that sink in. "Also, I'm suing you for stealing my mother's jewelry. $5 million. My lawyers will contact you today." Helena's hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the table. Natasha was next. Meen looked at Brandon's sister, the woman who'd filmed her worst moment for entertainment. "I destroyed your modeling career because you filmed my abuse for views. You wanted to make me go viral for being humiliated. Congratulations. Now you're viral for being a fraud." Meen smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Oh, and that modeling agency you worked for? I bought it last week. You're fired." Natasha started sobbing. Loud, ugly sobs. Meen felt nothing. Then she turned to Brandon. This was the man she'd loved. The man she'd trusted with everything. The man who'd watched them throw her in the snow and said nothing. "The DNA test was fake," Meen said. Her voice was quiet now. Deadly quiet. "Luna is your daughter. And you abandoned her when she was 3 days old." She leaned forward. "I have full custody. Court ordered. You will never see her again. Ever." Brandon's face crumpled. He started crying, actually sobbing, reaching out toward Meen like a child. Meen stepped back like he was poison. "Don't," she said. "Don't you dare." But Meen wasn't finished. She pulled up a news feed on the screen. Live footage. And Cassandra, Meen said. Or should I say Candy Thompson, the con artist. The woman who scammed 3 men before Brandon. The woman who faked a pregnancy with a prosthetic belly and forged ultrasounds. The news feed showed police arresting Cassandra outside what used to be the Kingston mansion. She was screaming, fighting. They had to force her into the police car. She's being arrested for fraud as we speak, Meen said. Multiple counts. She'll be in prison for years. Meen leaned close to Brandon, close enough that only he could hear. Her voice was a whisper, a knife wrapped in silk. You told me I was nothing, nobody, trash. She straightened up, spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. But trash doesn't own a $2.3 billion empire. Trash doesn't destroy dynasties. Trash doesn't decide whether entire families survive or disappear. Meen walked back to her chair, sat down, crossed her legs, looked at them like they were insects. You didn't throw away trash, Brandon. Her voice was ice and fire and finality. You threw away a queen, and now? She smiled. Now you're all finished.
1 month later, the Kingston mansion was seized and auctioned off. A tech billionaire bought it for half its value. Kingston Industries went bankrupt and shut down completely. The company that had existed for 4 generations died in a single day. Gregory was working as a sales manager at some small electronics company making $40,000 a year. He wore cheap suits now, took the bus to work. Nobody at his new job knew he used to be somebody. Helena was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town. No boutiques, no status, no friends. The women who used to have lunch with her pretended they didn't know her when they passed on the street. Natasha became a social media disaster. Every video she posted got flooded with comments, reminding her what she'd done. She couldn't get work anywhere. She was living with Helena in that tiny apartment. They fought constantly. Brandon got divorced from Cassandra the moment the truth came out. He was living with his parents in their cramped space. 3 adults in 1-bedroom apartment. He was working deliveries for a food app, riding a bicycle through the city he used to own. People recognized him sometimes, pointed, whispered. He wore sunglasses even when it rained. Cassandra went to jail on multiple fraud charges, 3 years minimum. Her mugshot went viral. Someone made it into a meme. Meanwhile, Meen's empire was thriving. She'd expanded into new markets, hired 200 new employees. Forbes did a feature on her, the mysterious chairwoman who appeared from nowhere. Nobody knew about the snow, about the abuse. Not yet. Luna was healthy, happy, beautiful. She had her father's dark hair but her mother's eyes. Strong eyes, fighter's eyes. Meen had donated $10 million to women's shelters in her mother's name, the Meen Chen Foundation. It helped women escaping abuse, gave them money, resources, legal help, everything Meen wished she'd had. And that surveillance video of what the Kingston family did to her? Arthur convinced her to release it. She wasn't sure at first. It felt like exposing a wound. But Arthur said women needed to see it, needed to know they could survive, so she released it. It went viral in 6 hours, 50 million views in 3 days, 100 million in a week. The Kingston family became a worldwide symbol of cruelty and karma. Everyone knew their faces. Everyone knew what they'd done. They couldn't hide, couldn't escape. The internet never forgets. People showed up at Gregory's work, at Helena's apartment, at the grocery store where Natasha worked stocking shelves. They filmed them, posted it. The humiliation was endless. 3 months after the boardroom meeting, Brandon showed up at Chen Global headquarters. Security called Meen immediately. She almost said no, almost had them throw him out. But something made her say yes. Curiosity, maybe, or the need to see him one more time. He looked terrible, thin, hollow. His expensive clothes were gone. He wore jeans and a wrinkled shirt. His hands shook. They met in a conference room, not her office. He didn't deserve her office. Security guards stood outside. Meen sat down, didn't offer him a seat. Brandon stood there like a defendant waiting for sentencing. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Meen. I was weak, stupid. I let them control me. I should have protected you. Protected Luna. I—" "Stop," Meen said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut like glass. Brandon stopped. Tears ran down his face. "You're not sorry you did it," Meen said. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences." She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city. "You had 1,000 chances to be a good man. 1,000 moments where you could have chosen differently. But you didn't." She turned to face him. "You chose cruelty every single time." Brandon collapsed into a chair, put his head in his hands. "Please," he whispered, "please let me see Luna. Just once. I just want to see my daughter." Meen felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, nothing. "Luna is not your daughter," Meen said. "You gave up that right when you threw her in the snow, when you stood there and watched her almost die and did nothing." She walked toward the door. "She'll grow up knowing her father was a coward who abandoned her, but she'll also know her mother was strong enough to survive, strong enough to build an empire, strong enough to make sure she never needs anything." Meen opened the door. Security stepped inside. "Escort him out," she said. "If he comes back, call the police." Brandon tried to stand, tried to say something, but the guards already had him. They walked him out. Meen watched him go, watched him disappear into the elevator. She felt nothing. 5 years passed. Luna was 5 years old now, smart, fierce, funny. She asked about her father sometimes. Meen told her the truth, age-appropriate truth, but truth. "Your father made bad choices," Meen said. "He hurt people, so he can't be in our life." Luna thought about that. "Did he hurt you, Mama?" Meen nodded. "Yes, baby, he did." Luna hugged her tight. "I'm glad you're strong, Mama." Meen held her daughter close, breathed in her shampoo, her innocence, her perfect trust. "Me too, baby, me too." The Kingston family never recovered. Gregory died of a heart attack at 53. Stress, shame. A broken heart, maybe. Helena lived longer, but barely. She became a bitter old woman who died alone in a nursing home Meen paid for anonymously. Even in revenge, Meen couldn't let an old woman die in the street. Natasha eventually moved away, changed her name, tried to disappear. Last Meen heard, she was working at a call center in another state. Brandon never remarried, never had other children. He worked, came home, drank, repeated. He tried to reach out to Meen twice more over the years. She never responded. Cassandra got out of prison after 3 years, tried to start over, but her face was too well known, her crimes too public. She ended up back where she started. Nobody and nothing. Meen thought about them sometimes. Usually late at night when Luna was asleep and the penthouse was quiet. She wondered if the revenge had been worth it, if destroying them had healed her. The answer was complicated. The revenge didn't heal her. Therapy healed her. Time healed her. Building something good healed her. But the revenge gave her something else. It gave her power in a moment when she had none. It gave her agency when she'd been helpless. It let her rewrite the ending of a story that should have destroyed her. They thought breaking her would be easy, thought she'd disappear quietly into the snow and never be heard from again. But pain doesn't break everyone. Sometimes it forges you. Sometimes it makes you stronger than you ever imagined possible. Meen built an empire, raised a daughter who would never bow to anyone, changed the lives of thousands of women through her foundation. And yes, she made the people who hurt her pay for every single bruise. She wasn't sorry, not even a little bit, because they taught her the most important lesson anyone could learn. You are not what people throw away. You are what you build from the ashes. Luna came running into Meen's office one afternoon, 7 years old now. "Mama! Mama! I drew you something!" It was a picture of the two of them, big smiles, holding hands. Above them, Luna had written in her careful handwriting, My mama is a queen. Meen put that drawing on the wall of her office, right behind her desk, where she could see it every single day. Because that little girl was right. Her mama was a queen, and queens don't forget. They don't forgive. But most importantly, queens never ever stay down. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story of survival, revenge, and triumph. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and share your own story of overcoming the people who underestimated you. Because the world needs to know that being thrown away is not the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning.